today it is one of our getting to know each other sessions, and we have our three lovely ladies, Shelly Kensell and Rochelle, Goot and Ruth Jurke, who they all sit together in shul in the row in front of me. So ever since I've been coming to the Grate, they have been sitting in front of me. So over the years, I've gotten to know them, but not well enough. And we thought it would be just fun to have a little chat and we'll get to know each other a bit better. So I think what we'll do is we're going to start off in the shul era and ask them how they all met, and then we'll go back to the beginnings of their lives and follow them from when they were born. So would one of you, Shelly, perhaps would you like to start off and tell us how you met, and then the other two just chime in whenever you want to.
Okay. Well, we all basically, I would say we all met in shul, if not through Hader and other events with Figs, and also hubbies were on service committees or the board of management, and it just became a friendship. Whenever we were in shul, well, just decided to sit with one another.
Yes.
I also think, Shelley, that you and I go back a lot further than that.
Oh yes, we go back to our youth.
Our youth in Auckland. We were part of the Auckland Jewish community there, and we sort of knew each other. Maybe not quite so much with Shelley, but I knew her two older brothers because they were more in my age group. Shelley's a wee bit younger than me. But we always knew of Shelley, and when we came to Australia, they were living not far from us in
down the road.
Yep, they were down the road. So we sort of renewed our acquaintance there as well.
Okay. And so now let's go back more to the beginnings, and Ruth, tell us where you were born and where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Sydney, and I grew up all my life. I went to Bondi Beach Public School, and then I went to Dover Heights Girls High, and then I went to business college at East Sydney Tech, the old jail, and near St Vincent's Hospital, and then I started working. So yes, I'm the only Aussie amongst us. No.
Oh, we're all Aussies now, though.
Yeah. Right? Oh, yes, that's right. You are. So, do you want me to keep going?
Yes. Well, tell us where did you work?
Well, I worked in an accountant's office, and then I went overseas. I went overseas to America. I went to a cousin of my father's, who's also a cousin in common with Stephen's mother, and her daughter, who was the same age as me, was going to travel to Europe, so I decided to go with her. And I went to London on my own first, and I met the cousin in Amsterdam, but I was in London for about 2 weeks with Stephen's family, and when I left, I said I'm coming back to work because I really loved London. So I travelled, and there's lots of stories about my travel experiences to tell, but unfortunately my cousin became ill while we were mentally ill, and she ended up leaving me on my own and going back to Amsterdam, and I had to travel on my own, which was quite an experience because we had a car and I had to take it back.
How old were you at the time?
Sorry?
How old were you at the time?
I was 21, I think. Yeah, 21, 22, yes. So then I went back to London and I worked, got a job, and I was there 2 years or going on for 3 years. And then my parents said, it's time for you to come home. So they came over with my sister, Carol, who's down there. And my parents travelled with us first for a little bit, and then Carol and I continued with our travels for Europe, and then we went to Israel, and then we came home. So I was only home, we came home in November, and January, just straight after New Year's Eve, Stephen rang from London and proposed to me.
Aha.
So, yes. I only came home for a short while and then I went back to London.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yes.
And Ruth, where did your ancestors come from? How many generations Australian are you?
No, my parents came from Germany. My father came from Hanover and my mother came from Hamburg. And they met here in Australia. They were quite young when they came.
When did they come?
My mother, it's about 1938.
Wow.
38, 39, yes.
Just in time, my goodness.
Yeah, my mother's father, she always tells a story that he got the map of the world out and said, where's the furthest country from Australia, from Europe that we can go to? And they chose New Zealand first. They couldn't get into New Zealand, and the next spot was Sydney. So and my father came out on his own on a ship with him. He had so many stories to tell, the mischief he got up onto the ship, on the ship that he was on. But he came out and his family gradually came over too. So he had his brother and his parents came to Sydney as well.
Oh.
So I was very fortunate. I had grandparents, which Stephen never knew any grandparents, but I was very fortunate that I knew my grandparents and we were all very close. So, and then, so I went back to London about March, and now Rabbi Apple was the rabbi of the shul that Stephen went to. And so we got married in October, and
look at that.
Yeah, oh my God, I looked young then, didn't I? Oh boy. And his topped hat and tails. And then, where am I up to? So, yes, we got married in London. Then we waited for Stephen's father to retire at 65, and because his parents, Stephen being an only child, they agreed to come to Sydney. So we had Karen in London. She was born in London. And then we came out a few months before the Apples came out to Sydney, yes. So that was, I mean, we just live up the road from Aruba Shul, but we decided that we would go to the Great Synagogue. Now, I was brought up at the temple, so I grew up there and had my bat mitzvah and everything there, but so we chose to come to the Grate. And so we had a long association with the Apples.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Lauren, what's happening with the screen sharing?
Yeah, and then
I'm trying to
You're trying to understand.
Give me a minute. Just keep talking.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, Shelly, why don't you start telling us where you were born and grew up while Lauren is figuring this out.
I was born in Auckland and stayed, born in Auckland, raised
and
there.
Where had your parents come from? When did they go to New Zealand?
My parents went to New Zealand when they were married. I think it was 1938.
And from where?
My father was a Kiwi. Mum was the Australian. She was born here. But they met through the scouting movement. My father had come over to Australia at some stage on a scout conference or something. Mum was the girl guide captain for the Jewish Guides. Anyway, they met and they got married in 38 and went back to New Zealand to live. My mother's parents, they came out from England in 1911. Mum was born 1912. And my grandfather was the secretary, the headmaster, you name it, of the Great Synagogue. So I go back quite a bit with the shul.
Shelly, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Lauren, we're seeing a screen.
I know. Are you? Yeah. Look, I'm going to actually sign out and then sign back in again. So you're going to have to give me back my admin when I leave. I can't stop sharing. So just Give me a minute and I'll be back. Okay, you can keep talking, Shelly.
Sorry for that. Okay,
sorry,
right.
everyone.
Keep going, Shelly.
So mum, as I say, Mum and Dad then went to New Zealand to live, and I've got two brothers. One brother passed away 20 years ago, and the other brother is now living in Perth. So there's nobody back in New Zealand now for us. So I haven't been back, I don't think, for 10 years. My schooling was all there. When I left school, I went and worked for an insurance company. And for many, many years, I worked for insurance companies. Then I decided to come to Sydney on a working holiday. I'd been over a few times with my mother to visit her sister who lived here, but I came on a working holiday. And one of those working holidays, I actually bumped into Joe in town, and well, the rest is history, I suppose. And my working life here, I worked for the New Zealand Tourist Bureau for 3 years. I worked for insurance companies. And then after the children were born, I did a lot of volunteer work with the local schools and kindergartens, doing a lot of fundraising and things like that, and worked for the kindergarten union. I actually got an employed job for the kindergarten union. Did a bit of voluntary work and also paid work at the shul office while Rabbi Apple was still there. And then I worked for over 20 years in the wine industry.
The wine industry?
The wine industry here in Sydney.
What did you do with them?
I was a proofreader, a hard worker with my hands, all the wine lists and little table talkers that you see on restaurants, in the restaurants and everything. They were all produced by the desktop publishers, but I had to do all of the finishing work, the printing of them, the laminating of them, the putting together and dispatching.
And how about tasting?
Oh, yes. There were a number of tastings, and Joe always used to say I knew my way around Australia via the vineyards.
That's great. And like Ruth and Stephen, you also had two daughters?
Two daughters. We've got one living in Canberra. Sharon, the eldest, is living in Canberra. Diane is living up in Brisbane. So, of course, we don't get to see one another very often. And at the moment, well, practically off because of the border closures.
Right.
We're not having a good time at all. With Rochelle Goot, we met, well, of course, I can go back, Rochelle, to our Hebrew school days.
Yes, true.
And I remember one day we were walking, it was in the old shul, and we, for some reason, were walking up the street, and I heard somebody turn around and say, oh, this girl's name's Rochelle, and she was from Wellington. And I thought, there can't be another Rochelle. I'm a Rochelle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there were our B'nai B'rith days. But then you came here.
Yes.
Lauren's not working. Well, I tell you what, let's not worry about the screen sharing for now. So, Rochelle, you also born in New Zealand. Where did your parents come from?
Okay, my mother was the first generation New Zealander. Her parents were from England, but I think originally Russia. My father was born in Scotland and moved with his family, well, with his parents, to New Zealand when he was about 6 months old. And they almost didn't make it. Their ship was almost torpedoed. He was born in 1914 and 1915. And on their way out to New Zealand, their ship was almost torpedoed. Apparently it went right across the front of the ship. Yeah. So, but they did make it, and he grew up in Wellington, and my parents met obviously in New Zealand and got married there. And they had two children, myself and my older brother. And then when I was about 10 years old, just after my brother's bar mitzvah, we moved to Auckland. And I spent the rest of my childhood in Auckland until I went to a wedding for my best friend Ellie, who is on but not pictured, but she's there. Mike was living in Australia at the time. He was born in Palmerston North, which is also in New Zealand, and his family moved to Australia in 1959. And in 1968, he came back to New Zealand on his first trip to be best man for Ilan, who was Ellie's to-be husband. And Mike and I met at their wedding. And 15 months later, Mike and I were married. And now 51 years later, we're still together. So we had 3 children. I have 2 boys and two sons and a daughter. And I'm very fortunate that they all live in Sydney. So we get to see them quite regularly. We have 5 granddaughters. And that's probably about it.
Oh, well, that's absolutely lovely. Lauren, you want to share some pictures now?
I will try.
We'll try and do the rest
try
of
this
those,
one more time.
Those gorgeous wedding pictures.
They are
We'll try
gorgeous.
one more time. They're so beautiful.
Just give me a yell if let me know if you can see. I'll try it this. I don't know. Let's try this. Okay.
So in the time between Ellie and Ilan's wedding and mine and Michael's wedding, the shul in Auckland changed. We had a new shul built and the old shul had been sold. So Ellie's wedding was in the old shul and ours was in the new shul.
Ah, okay. What was the Jewish population of Auckland in those days?
Good question. I'm not sure. Do you know, Shelley?
I don't have a clue.
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Is the photo
I would
sharing,
say probably bigger than what it is now.
I think it was about 600 families is what I seem to recall. I don't know if it was Auckland or the whole of New Zealand or what, but 600 seems to ring a bell.
Okay. Yeah.
Jill, would you know?
Sorry?
Would Jill know? Jill Samuels know?
I don't know.
Jill's here.
Yeah.
Jill,
Jill?
is she? I think Jill is still muted. She was here. Jill,
Yeah, I was always told 1,000, but I don't know what the truth was. But just the interesting thing about the synagogue, which no doubt you all feel the same way, was that I thought it was a huge synagogue, and when I went back, I couldn't believe how tiny it was.
Which, the new or the old, Jill?
The old one.
The old one.
Oh, yes.
The original one. You know, it seemed a big synagogue. And
yeah, when we grew up, it was huge.
it was a huge synagogue, and it was Rabbi Esther was the rabbi forever, and everybody knew everybody else, and I think liked everybody else. It seemed to be a very nice community, I think.
Yeah.
Grow up in.
Very close knit.
Yes.
Yes, very.
Shelley,
I didn't know the 3 of you, so there you are.
Yes.
well, this
I knew your
amazing.
younger sister.
Pardon?
I knew your younger sister. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful that even though you didn't get together then, you do now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Shelley, even though we're not able to show that photo of your wedding, Shelley, with Rabbi Mandel, tell the story about it.
Okay. We were married in 73, April 73. And a few years later, well, just before Sharon was born, and she was born in July 76, I was just sitting on the bed one day going through documents, as you know, paperwork as one every now and again likes to reminisce on things. And I called out to Joe and I said, "Hey, Joe, have a look at this. This was our civil wedding papers." I said, "Rabbi Mandel hasn't signed them." And Joe got the giggles and he said to me, "Whoops." He said, "You've only got a few weeks to go. We may be having a bastard of a child." So anyway, very, very quickly, he picked up the telephone and he rang my mother and said to him, "We're going to be sending some papers to you because of Rabbi Mandel hasn't signed the paperwork." So Mum said, "Well, he's leaving very shortly to go and live in Israel." Joe said, "When?" "Next week." Well, we were lucky that a friend of ours, her mother was actually flying back to New Zealand that afternoon. So Joe got in the car and went out to the airport and gave her the paperwork and gave it to, who then delivered it to Mum. Mum went over to Rabbi Mandel's house to find out he wasn't leaving the following week, he was leaving a few days earlier. He was just getting in a car to go with his family to go to the airport. So there on the bonnet of the car, he had to sign our civil wedding papers. But it was, at that time, we were sort of shaking in our boots and saying, oh, this isn't legal. Even though the ketubah and everything was signed, he hadn't done the civil paperwork.
I saw the photo for 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, so it did work? Okay.
It did work.
Great, we'll go back to photo sharing. Just
He was very handsome.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Anna. How we all age with time.
Share the other wedding photos now. So that's the one with Rabbi Mandel. You show the others if you can, Lauren.
He actually was a rabbi at the Grate at one stage.
Yes, he was.
An assistant.
There's Shelly and Joe.
Poor Joe, he had to stand 2 steps higher than me so that he looked taller.
Tell us about this one, Shelly.
Okay, that photo was taken 32 years ago, and that was Sharon's bat mitzvah. And here we are 32 years later, and we've got fingers crossed that in about 3 weeks' time, both her children, Jacob and Lily, will do their bar and bat mitzvah at the Great Synagogue.
That would be so wonderful.
We've all got our fingers crossed, but it depends upon what's happening with COVID.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things. But that was 32 years ago, and it's just ironic. And that was my mother in the photo with us.
And Lauren, you got any of the other photos? Can you Shelly, tell us about this.
1972. Just before I came to Sydney, I used to play. I was a great I wouldn't say a great tennis player. I loved tennis, and I was working at that stage for the New Zealand Insurance Company. Every year, with all the insurance companies, there were tennis matches. And there were the other 3 girls I was with, and we actually won what was called the Pasco Cup that year. So we're quite proud of the effect of that one. There I am, second from the left. And if you notice, we've still got wooden rackets.
Bye.
So not only did I play tennis, but I also played squash. I played squash here in Australia.
Oh, right. That's
I played for Maccabi and a few other teams.
So this is Ruth and Stephen again. Keep going, Lauren.
This was at our 50th wedding anniversary celebration with our beautiful family.
Oh,
that we're very lucky to see a lot of.
Yeah, they're all here. Yeah, this was recently, wasn't it?
Yes, last year, October.
Last year, gorgeous, just gorgeous. And this is Rochelle, beautiful. I love that long train on your dress.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely exquisite. Exquisite. And your bridal party?
You may not recognise, but the one on the right is Mike's brother Robert.
I was going to say, look at all of Mike's hair.
Okay. Yeah, and the one on the left is my brother Graham.
Ah.
The 2 girls, bridesmaids, were my cousins, first cousins.
Gorgeous.
And the one on the left, the 2 of us are very, very friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah. So okay. Thanks, Lauren, for that. So, how did you actually meet your husbands? Who introduced? I think Rochelle, you said you met at a wedding.
We met at the wedding, yes.
Yes. And Ruth?
Well, as I said, I went to America where I stayed with a cousin of my father who was also a cousin of Stephen's mother, and different sides of the family. And we, when I was going to go to London, she wrote to Stephen's mother to say I was coming. And so, and that's how I ended up staying with their family and meeting Stephen. But he waited until I'd got home and then rang and proposed to me. But an interesting story was that how the family actually found Stephen's mother was that my grandfather, he did a trip to Europe, I don't know, 1955, 56. And my uncle Jerry, who just passed away a few months ago, he was studying in London, and he told his parents he's got to go to this restaurant because they've got really fantastic continental food. And Stephen's mother worked in that restaurant.
She's the manager.
She managed the restaurant. And when she saw my grandfather, she recognised him from Germany, and that's how they actually got together again. So, yeah, it was an interesting story.
Yeah, we've had a lovely comment here in the chat box. Diane Drexler said, "You all look as pretty as your wedding photos." That's true.
Very young.
Absolutely true. Yes. So when we were planning this session and chatting, we had some fun conversations, the three ladies and me, and some of the things that we talked about were, where were you when Kennedy was when you heard that Kennedy was assassinated? Shelley, do you want to?
Well, I was with my mother in the kitchen, and my brother Kevin came careering out into the kitchen and yelling and screaming. He was upset. There's going to be another war. There's going to be another war. And Mum said, "Calm down. What do you mean?" And he said, "Kennedy's just been assassinated."
With you.
And then, of course, you put the radio on in those days, and sure enough, that's what it was.
Yeah, November 1963. Where were you, Rochelle? Do you remember?
November 1963.
With you.
No.
No.
Ruth, do you remember hearing the news where?
Yeah, I was in Sydney, but I think my neighbour came running in to me to say, Kennedy's been assassinated, and then, we watched it on the news. But that's.
No, I have no recollection as to where I was when that news came through.
How about the moon landing?
Moon landing I remember well, because I was in New Zealand at the time, and I was really upset because I was going to have to watch the moon landing in black and white TV. It was a month before our wedding. We got married on the 4th of August, and I had gone over to New Zealand. I'd been living here in Sydney, and I'd gone back to New Zealand a month before the wedding so that I could prepare and sort of help my mother with arrangements and things. So we watched it on our black and white TV, and it was quite fascinating.
Yeah, where were you, Shelley, for that?
In New Zealand. New Zealand, I remember watching it on the black and white TV as well.
Actually, it doesn't matter about the black and white TV because there's not too much colour on the moon. So
no, it was all black and white.
Yeah. At least you had TV in South Africa. We didn't have television in those days. We listened to it on the radio. Right. I remember just sitting at the kitchen table with a little radio, hearing about it. And when did you hear when Princess Di was killed? Do you remember when you heard about that?
I remember that one quite well. My son Benjamin had just come back from an overseas trip. We'd picked him at the airport and brought him home, and he said there's been a terrible accident and Princess Diana has been injured. At that stage she hadn't died. I remember Mike and I went shopping we went up to Westfield or to Bondi Junction at that stage, and I can remember watching in the big stores as we went past, all of the TVs that were on in the shops were showing this picture of Princess Di and what was going on. And of course, at that stage, by that time, she had passed away.
I was up at my brother's place up at St Ives, and we'd gone up there for lunch, and David came in. He was the headmaster up at the shul up there, and he came in. We were all just sitting around talking, and he said, "Haven't you heard the news? Haven't you got the radio, the TV on?" He said, "Princess Di's just been killed." We all just stood there and looked at one another. A shock to the system, so of course on goes the television.
Yeah. And the planes into the Twin Towers in New York.
We were watching TV and we actually saw it happening, and we just couldn't believe that it was actually live. You know, we just sat there transfixed to the television. You know, yes. And we had family here from America. The young couple, young cousins here. They were up north, and we had. I can't remember whether we rang them to let them know, or I think we might have done. No. Were you?
Nicole is shaking her head.
You girls
No,
went.
they knew. They found out where they were staying. The people had let them know. So we did speak to them because they were obviously from there, and they were very upset.
But you girls were just coming back. Were you already?
I just came back. I literally just missed it. I arrived home the day before.
That's right.
I was on a flight similar to what that was previously.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh wow, Nicole.
Yeah. I arrived home on September 9, and then September 11 happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a funny experience for me. We'd been watching, I think it's called West Wing, that American TV show, and I'd been sitting up in bed watching it, and I must have fallen asleep. And I suddenly woke up, and I could see they were replaying this photo of the plane going into the towers. And I thought it was still part of the TV program. Didn't register with me at the time. And then all of a sudden...
That was us too, Rochelle. Exactly what happened to us.
I woke Michael up and I said, "Quick, look at this." I said, "The planes have gone into the tower." I said, "I can't believe it." And we just sat there absolutely horrified.
Yeah.
Well, we were in bed fast asleep. Telephone rang, and it was Sharon in Canberra. And she was really going to town, and Joe said to her, "Sharon, you're having a nightmare. What's going on? Calm down." He was trying to calm her down. Anyway, in the end, we got off the phone, and he said, "Maybe I'll put the television on and just see." And sure enough, there it was. And so we rang her back and said, we apologise for what we had said to her. And it was just everybody was horrific. Everybody was just glued to the television sets.
Yes, we were.
I will tell you, I'm going to ask Lauren to unmute herself. Lauren was living about a half a mile from the Pentagon at the time. She was in college. She can tell you what it felt like.
We suddenly heard a bump, and I thought my partner had fallen out of bed. So I woke up, sat up, got to start laughing at him, and realized that he was actually in the toilet at the time. So I couldn't imagine. I opened up my balcony, and all I could, because we were the first apartment block next to the Pentagon, and I literally just saw this thin line of smoke coming out from the Pentagon, and it seemed to, we didn't know what it was. We had no idea it was so serious. This was before selfies. We actually have selfies in front of ourselves with this and the smoke coming out. And then the smoke started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I got, oh, this doesn't look good. So I turned on the telly and suddenly saw what was happening. And we just got so scared. We're literally, a few hundred meters away from it. So anyway, jumped in the car, got probably around the block, couldn't move hours, pulled right back into our car park and just sat and watched TV for the next day. It was very, very, very scary. But,
Yeah. We were in Nashville at the time. It was the most unbelievable time to be living in America then. As is probably unbelievable to be living there now. I'm very glad.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, but now some other topics. I'd like to get to cooking. One of my loves. Is there anything special that you like to cook? What do you think about cooking? Do you do cooking, Shelly? start?
Oh, I like a roast dinner. I don't think you can go past it.
Uh-huh.
I like doing a lot of baking for the children because unfortunately young Lily is anaphylactic. Can't have eggs, can't have nuts, can't have this, can't have that. So I'm always looking for recipes, and mainly I bake biscuits for the children and always have them in the freezer. So.
Rochelle, how about you?
Yeah, I'm a pretty traditional cook. I like roasts as well. We have, as often as we can, all the family over for Friday night dinner. And I've discovered that the kids like corned beef, pickled beef. And I know that if I cook that everyone will eat it. Normally I have to do like separate dinners for the kids and for us. But a roast lamb or brisket or corned beef seems to go down really well with the kids. So they all know when they come, they always ask, Grandma, have you got corned beef, they call it, pickled brisket, they call it. Are you having pickled brisket for dinner tonight? So yeah, I can always know that will go down well. But I enjoyed it. I learned to cook. Actually, I'm really not sure how I learned to cook. I think it was probably following my mother. I can remember as a young child, teenager, whatever, when my mother was cooking, I would always ask her, can I help you? And her standard reply was, yes, you can wash the dishes. Whenever she cooked, I would clean up and do the dishes. But obviously I watched what she was doing and I learned to cook from her rather than by actually cooking. Because after I'd met Michael and I came to live in Sydney, I was flatting with an old school friend of mine who also from New Zealand. And I was the only one of the three of us that were in the flat, the three girls that could cook. And I sort of still don't quite know how I learned to cook. I think it obviously must have been just watching my mother because I never cooked at home.
Yeah, and in that, go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, I've always liked cooking. I actually did cooking at school. It was home science that we did. And we just learned basic cooking, but I've always enjoyed cooking, and not so much now, but I used to love baking. And I've got one particular favourite that was from my late grandmother. It's called a Frankfurter Franz, which is like a sponge cake with a buttercream, and it's got toffee on the top. And one of Nicole's friends has got a birthday this week, so she has asked me she would like that cake for her birthday, so I'm actually going to do some baking for a change. Another favourite was a lemon meringue pie, which my family all loved, and I had to make that for every birthday. But, you know, everybody's been on diets and this and that, and so you don't do that. But as Stephen said, my grandson loves my chicken soup. Bubba chicken soup. He wants his chicken soup, and he actually likes to eat giblets. So, yeah. So,
excuse me, what about being the Lamington Queen? That is what you're known as.
All right, the Lamington Queen. Yes, I used to make a lot of Lamingtons. Everybody loves the Lamington.
And I think your schnitzel also used to go down well with your fried potatoes.
Yes, that's right. Oh, fried potatoes. Yeah, that's a big specialty.
Ruth, I think whatever you cook is lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question about your Lamingtons. I'm a fairly new Australian, but I know that there's the question of, do you put a jam filling in or don't you?
I don't. Yeah, I don't put.
My children like her tuna bake.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Lovely. Everybody chime in if you want to add something. This is lovely. Just unmute yourself.
Everybody likes has their favourites.
So what do you put in your chicken soup? Every family has a different chicken soup recipe.
Well, I put top rib and bones, lots of bones, giblets, and lots of vegetables.
So you do chicken and beef?
Yeah, I put the beef in, yeah. I think it gives it a good flavour.
Yeah.
And then we have the beef as a meal. So
and then the top rib's yummy afterwards.
And how many hours do you cook that chicken soup for?
A couple of hours, I suppose.
Mhm.
I don't know. Did I learn that from you, Carol, the top rib? Or?
Yeah, I don't know whether Mum used to do that, but I always do. But I cook mine for about 4 hours, and I put about 10 frames. Well, I make 2 big pots because everybody takes chicken soup.
Yes.
She's
got a
That's because they shop in your freezer.
She's got a shopping
I'm the local supermarket.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always use chicken frames,
Yeah.
giblets, and chicken feet when I can get them. I think the feet make the really
Can't get them in Melbourne anymore.
You can't?
No.
Ah, okay.
No.
I remember my bobber putting the chicken feet in the soup. I used to love them. I mean, I don't do that. I've never done it with feet, but it gave it helped. It gelled also if you put it in the fridge afterwards.
Yeah, there's a lot of collagen. A lot of collagen in the chicken feet. It's very good for you.
Yeah, yeah. And what somebody taught me was to put a little pinch of chili, or a little piece of a red chili in your chicken soup when you're cooking it, and it gives it a bit of a lift without tasting like chili.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something I've started doing recently. Really good.
I'll keep away from the chili.
I do too.
No, I just use the frames if one can get a boiler with plenty of necks and giblets. To me, the necks are the best part. I love sucking on the necks.
Yes.
The necks, you can eat the bones. They're always so soft.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I just get it from Mum's freezer.
You.
Right. And what veggies do you use?
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt, but I have to go. It was very nice chatting with you all and seeing you all.
Okay, nice to see you.
Lovely to have
all
you,
the best.
Carol.
Lucky that you're in Sydney and not in Melbourne. We're not allowed. It's a disaster here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thinking of you.
Safe.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Sending you virtual hugs.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Bye, Carol.
They're allowed to do?
Nothing.
I always put carrot, onion, and celery into chicken soup. Yeah.
I put carrots, parsnip, turnip, celery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Jewish
looked
home
through
without chicken soup isn't a Jewish home.
Who said that?
Stephen said that.
What did he say?
I said a Jewish home without chicken soup is not a Jewish home.
Yes, agreed.
And unfortunately, I have to make it for myself because Joe won't have soup.
Really?
No, Joe won't go near soup.
Not even chicken soup?
No. So I make a big pot for myself and freeze it and all sorts of, and for the kids, of course. Yes. But like the others, I just put in celery, carrots, parsnip, whatever's going.
Yeah. I look through, and if I've got any parsley,
and of course onion.
Yeah, sometimes I'll put a bit of pumpkin in. If I've got some pumpkin or some sweet potato. My mum used to put a tomato in as well, so I put a tomato in. I don't know, and sometimes if I've got a bit of a red capsicum that's going. Steve is saying put a knödel in. Something to give it color. The other thing, do you peel your onions or do you leave them unpeeled?
I have always peeled the onions. I've never cooked with an unpeeled onion.
No, nor have I. And I noticed a lot of the TV shows of today are showing leave the skin on.
Yeah, sometimes an onion has got more than one layer of skin. And what I do is I take the outer one off and then I wash it really well and I use it with the inner, and it gives it color. The color of the skin gives the soup a nice color.
My mother always taught me not for chicken soup, but with vegetable soup, to grate pumpkin into the vegetable soup. I don't puree it. I just have pieces, like I cut them fairly small, but always grate pumpkin into the soup. It thickens it up, and it also gives it a good color. So I finally grate the pumpkin into the soup as well.
Ah, so you have the soup. When you eat the soup, you have the veggies in it still.
Yeah. That's vegetable soup though, not chicken soup.
Yeah. My mum was fanatical about straining every last bit of veggie out, so her soup was so clear you could just about see through it.
No, I love the veggies in the soup.
Yeah, we have those for lunch the next day after I've cooked the chicken soup. Yeah. So anybody else have any questions that you have for our ladies? Or any comments or anything to add? Carl and Karen, you want to add something about growing up in your family?
It was a terrible life, Sharon, terrible life I had. The stories I could tell.
Well, go ahead.
We grew up with Shelly and Rochelle as well, like all of them.
Yeah,
so I
and
think
the boys,
Rochelle's oldest son was one of my first boyfriends.
Wow. and actually, Karen made the wedding dress for my daughter when Danielle got married. That was a feat and a half.
Well, we had always, but a pleasure, and she looked beautiful. We had, we were all at GSY together.
Yeah.
I was a madracha, most of them, although David's only a year younger than me.
The same age as me, 6 months older than me.
Yeah. So, but we were all at GSY together. They're all various ages, but
yeah,
we were on camps. We had them on camps together.
Yeah, and then we looked after Sharon and Diane. Yeah. They were the younger ones. We were their madrachas.
Yeah. I can remember, I've got a photo somewhere of the demonstration Seder at the Grate with, I think it was Sharon or Diane with you, Karen.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think we also did the musicals and stuff together.
That's correct.
Kids were all involved in musicals and.
What that hall doesn't accommodate today.
Oh, that hall has a lot of stories.
It does.
A lot.
I love hearing these memories of the Grate. If you would love to share some more, I would love to hear them.
Oh, we've done so much. I mean, we all, like Mum said, we grew up there, right?
Yeah.
All of them. So, but Shelly, Rochelle, how long have you, since you were there, like since you came to Sydney, have you been at the Grate?
Yeah. I went to the Grate initially because it reminded me so much of our old shul in Auckland.
Yeah.
Very similar. And I just sort of fell in love with the shul there, and I've been going there ever since. But when our boys were doing bar mitzvah, my two boys are 13 months apart. And so we had one after the other. Michael used to go in every Sunday morning and do breakfast for the boys after their tefillah class. Early in the morning and have their lessons, and then they'd have breakfast, and Michael would help cook the breakfast for the kids.
We used to go on Friday nights too. There used to be a choir on Friday nights. There used to be quite a gathering that went. We all used to go after school, and we would have rehearsals with chocolate milk. I remember they always put chocolate milk out for us.
Chocolate milk, milk.
And we would sort of have
Theo was our choir master, right? Theo for most of the time. Theo Whitmont.
Theo was there. Right. And and we used to sing, and that's why I still know that Friday night service inside out, back to front. Like Grace After Meals, it's from all those camps and from Friday nights. It's embedded in my brain, those tunes. It used to be lots of fun. All kids of all ages, we used to come. So
David was at Sydney Grammar at that time, and he would go to school, do his homework, and then do choir practice and attend this Friday night service. Alex, what's his name? Alex. He's in the choir now.
Yes. He dated my friend.
He would always bring David home. On a Friday night, he'd bring him home for us, which was nice.
I'm really intrigued if I can just say, I'm really intrigued, all you New Zealanders. I would have given my eye teeth to have known that. When I came to live in Sydney when I was married, remember being so lonely. I didn't know anybody, and it was in Andy's more observant days, so we didn't go to the Grate often because he preferred to walk, and we went to North Shore. And it's really been intriguing for me to listen to all your talk and know you all came from New Zealand, because I didn't have a clue. So, you know, it's really nice to have something like this where I think, Shelley, you told me a few weeks ago that you came from Auckland, but I had no idea that any of you were New Zealanders. And
but Jill, I go along with.
It's a bit sad, you know. It's been really nice to listen and hear and know that you, you know, because Auckland was not a small, it was quite a small community, but you tended to know people, I guess, who were exactly your age. And
that's right. You tended to know people older than you, but not so much younger than yourself.
Because I didn't know any of you.
Right.
I wasn't aware of any of you, or being New Zealanders. So 50 years ago, it would have been fabulous for me to have known there were other people around.
Jill, I go along with you. Like when I first came to Sydney, I went to the Grate because of the family history behind it with my grandparents. And I used to sit in shul and think, do I belong here? Do I not belong here? And I'd look around. I didn't know a soul. It was very lonely. And then Jackie, she's now Jackie Abbott.
Yeah.
She would be sitting, I used to go and sit in my aunt's seat, and I'd look across the shul and I'd see Jackie, and particularly on Yontif, we'd wave to one another. One day we started talking and we said, yes, it is very lonely, but it's lovely to see a familiar face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And Rabbi Astor, of course, who was the rabbi that I grew up with in Auckland, knew everybody. He was just...
Yes.
Yeah.
I did go to North Shore for a while on the Yom Tovim because my brother was there and he got me a seat. But I just didn't like the service at North Shore. I felt more at home at the Grate.
Yes. Well, we went to North Shore a bit more because Andy could walk there. These days he drives.
Thank you so much, Shelly, Rochelle, Ruth.